Good morning. Well, as you can see, we have Sheri Tinker on our Zoom call with us. We actually had booked her last year at this time, and things were really heating up. And so she didn't feel she could make that drive from Forks. We had some bad weather and then COVID. But today we have Sheri Tinker from Sarges Place. She is the president, executive director, and founding member of North Olympic Regional Veterans Housing Network, which runs Sarges Place shelter in Forks. She also oversees two permanent housing projects in Forks and Port Angeles, as well as a small farm. Sarge's Farm Stand and The Attic, the nonprofit second store. She has a passion for the creation of programs and sees her job as a holistic way to reconnect her veterans to society through outreach, awareness, and connectivity. Thank you so much. Please welcome Sheri Tinker from Sarge's Place.
Thank you so much. Wow. I'm looking at this lovely panel of everybody. I'm going, you guys are like the beautiful people of our county. I'm absolutely delighted to see who all is on here today. There's a lot of mentors of mine behind the scenes that you don't realize how much I've looked up to a lot of you. It's very cool. As she said, I am the president and the executive director of Norvin. I wanted to give you a little bit of history about how we began and where we started, and then kind of tell you about our programs. And if I get a chance to, I'd love to tell you a story about one of our vets that I had first outreach to before this all began. So back in about 2007, I was working at West End Outreach Services, a mental health agency. It's part of Forks Community Hospital. And I was running a small shelter that we had there. We had one for singles and one for families. And I was outreaching in the woods and out on the beaches, and I was looking for people who were homeless and had mental health issues. And at that time, we were a part of the point in time count, which is a statewide count of the homeless within the state. It's how funding is allocated for different communities. And we were finding that there were nearly 100, there was over 70 homeless veterans in Clallam County. And at that time, per capita, we had the highest concentration of vets in the county per capita, but we also had the highest concentration of homeless vets in the county, in the state. And it absolutely horrified me. My ex-husband had been active duty military. My grandfather was a colonel in the Army. I had a nephew that was serving in Iraq at that time. My brother was career Army. My other brother was Marine. I was absolutely horrified by seeing these people that were homeless that had literally signed their name on the dotted line. I just feel like there's a slap in the face to someone who has served our country honorably. So I went up to my boss and I said, hey, there's a lot of homeless veterans out here. And she looked at me, I'll never forget it. It was Beth Palmer. She was a therapist over at Weston Outreach. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, just go create a shelter. And I looked at her and I said, I don't know anything about doing that. And she said, oh, you can figure it out. And she kind of shooed me out of her office. So I went back down to my coworker and the gal that worked underneath me. And I said, she told me I should just create a shelter. And she said, yeah, do it. That'd be great. So it was this weird thing. I'd never done anything like that in my life. I'd only worked in mental health for a few years. And at that point, I only had a bachelor's in criminal justice. So I didn't even have my social work degree. And I was lost, but I felt like it was my job, So I was naive enough to just take it on. So I started Googling things. I started gathering people around me that had like-minded ideas. And I found folks in Jefferson County and Clallam County that were service officers. They helped connect people to VA benefits. I talked to homeless veterans. I talked to social service agencies. I just beat the pavement everywhere, went all over the state and toured different homeless shelters and realized that we could start applying for some grants and that we could maybe create something in Clallam County. The predominant folks were living out on the West End. We had a lot of people that I was outreaching to out in the woods. One gentleman was up at the Hoco, who I would like to talk about in a moment here. But we had people just scattered all over. And there were pockets of people. I know people have heard the rumors, but it's true. There were pockets of people living out in the woods, a lot of Vietnam vets in particular. And those were people that I had been connecting with. So I knew that a shelter might work for them, but it might just be a hub where people could come and get questions answered. They could get some resources, but then if they wanted to come in out of the cold, they could do so, or out of the rain, as our 12 feet of rain can attest to. So we got a group of folks together. We formed a nonprofit called North Olympic Regional Veterans Housing Network. It was actually a nonprofit that had existed in the community before North Olympic Regional Housing Network. We added veteran to it, and we were able to get on the ground running with our nonprofit. We then applied for an appropriation from Senator Patty Murray, and we got $500,000. That bought us the 2-story building that I'm sitting in today. It's a 1970 2-story apartment building. It had 6 apartments, 3 on bottom, 3 on top. We completely gutted it manually ourselves. Then we had a contractor come in, Hope came in and did a remodel. We have 12 bays in here, 8 for men, 4 for women. It's a communal living situation downstairs. So the 8 bays are for men, 4 bays were for women on the other side of the building. We have a communal kitchen, pantry, a PC lab, laundry, and day room. And so folks can actually not even be living within Sarges Place, but if we're connected with them, they can come in and do their laundry and cook a hot meal if they need to. We got a contract with the Department of Veterans Affairs called Healthcare for Homeless Veterans, and that serves us very nicely for our operating dollars. That pays a stipend per night per veteran that stays within our program. So as part of what we do here, we needed to have a social worker overseeing the program. And so I went back to school and did a long distance program while I was working at Weston Outreach, and got my master's in social work, so that we could have that social work piece overviewing the program. That means I'm a therapist, and I can provide therapy and diagnostic care for the vets that live here. It's worked out very nicely. We've served hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of vets since 2011 when we opened up. Everything from us going out and talking to people outdoors to people showing up at our door or getting referrals. I got a call from Mississippi the other day. They actually found us on the internet, and it was a homeless veteran, and I was able to connect them with some resources. So that's been a lovely aspect to have that social media presence. But we were in operation for about 5-6 years, and we were seeing more and more families coming through. Now, downstairs, we have our single bays for folks, but upstairs, we have 3 2-bedroom apartments at our shelter. And it wasn't working very well to have a lot of families upstairs. It just became kind of chaotic for everybody. So I was talking with Kay Kassinger, who's the Housing Authority Board Commissioner. I'm a Housing Authority Board Commissioner, and Kay was the Executive Director. And they had a fourplex in the Housing Authority did in Port Angeles, and they really wanted to take it off of their rosters. It didn't really pencil out well for them. And she asked whether or not our nonprofit might be interested in taking on that entity if they could find some funding to transfer it to our organization. I said, sure, why not? On our board, my board said, if we can make it work financially, that'd be wonderful. So the Housing Authority and our nonprofit put in for a Washington State Department of Commerce Housing Trust Fund application about 6 years ago. And we secured $500,000, which was the price tag for Sarges originally. It's been a magical number for us. And we were able to purchase the building that they had previously owned. It's just off of Lauritsen near the library on Lopez. We bought the building and remodeled it, and then we project-based the units. And that means that we took a Section 8 voucher that was actually supported by the VA. So it's a VA supportive housing voucher. We put a voucher on each one of these units, and that means that a vet would move in that has disabilities, mental health or physical. They then have a social worker with the VA that's attached to them. And the renter in there, the veteran and their family, they only pay a portion of the rent, and the rest is subsidized by the federal government. It works out nicely. They get the support that they need to reintegrate back into society and back in, and maybe sometimes they need a lifetime of support. And other times, some of the folks are only there for a short amount of time, and they can move back into other housing or buy a home. We've had folks successfully move out and actually buy a house. But it's permanent housing, and we've been delighted with that. So that project in Port Angeles is called The Outpost. About a year after that, I was sitting here in my office in Forks and realizing that we had veterans that needed a little more care. They really, if they moved out on their own, we were very concerned that they would fail in their housing. Mental health issues, early stage dementia, combat trauma. And I was literally looking across the street over here at the building over there. And it was a sad, dilapidated modular house on 1.3 acres of land. And I turned to my case manager and I said, we need to just buy the house across the street. And she looks at me and she goes, with what money? And I said, I don't know. Well, maybe we can figure it out. So I called Carol Lunsford. Some of you guys might know Carol. He used to own Lunsford Realty out in Forks, and an old friend. And I said, hey, Carol, he's retired now, but he's in the know. And I said, do you have any idea who owns the property across the street? You know, the renter over there looks like they're not taking very good care of the place. And he told me that it was a veterinarian that used to live there. They lived in Pennsylvania and they were quite desperate to get rid of the house. So he gave me their phone number in Pennsylvania. And they told me the renter hadn't been paying for about 6-8 months. And they said, hey, if you shoo out the renter, you could take over our payments. Like, you gotta kid me. You know, this is a small town kind of a thing. So I did so. I shooed out the renter. It was rather dramatic. We had police involved, but we helped to make that situation be resolved for them. And they were happy because they were months and months behind on their mortgage. And we got things caught up, and we actually bought the property with some equity in hand. Since that time, we have carved out, so there's a 1986 double wide modular that's on, it's actually in nice condition, but it's situated on that property. And previously there used to be a fenced in area where they had bumper boats, above ground water bumper boats. And I kept thinking we would tear down that fence, but the fence has now served us quite well. We've crafted a large hen yard. We have chickens. We have about 20. We used to have 30, and we just had raccoons eat about 7 of them. Just literally in the last couple of weeks, it's been horrific. But on the other side of the large fenced area, we actually have a fully functioning farm. And I mean that literally now. It's not just a large garden. We have built a small farm stand, and we have where we're selling our produce. We're selling 2 organic farmers' produce there seasonally. We have a double car garage, a very large double car garage on this property, on this house. And we've turned that into the attic, which is a secondhand store for us. People give us donations, and all of our vets that move out into permanent housing are able to go in there, pick out a couch, a chair, pictures on the wall, pots and pans and dishes, and for free. And then whatever we sell there during the week, that money just goes right back into our coffers and helps our programs. We have carved out 2 apartment buildings out of the 3-bedroom house. We have 1 bedroom for a man who has a VASH voucher, one of those VA supportive housing. Someone just knocked on my window. I don't know who. And then we have an apartment at the rear of the house as well that we carved out there. And so with that, we have 2 renters on the property, and that actually helps to offset our mortgage cost of $1,010 we have every month. On this property, we have a large piece of grassy land that's wide open. And I don't know if y'all have heard or read in the newspaper, but we just secured money from the Washington State Department of Commerce for a modular housing trust fund application, $686,000 that we will be putting a modular stick-built home on the property over there called Hobucket House. Hobucket is named after Jimmy Hobucket. He was one of our founding members who died of cancer a few years ago. And Jimmy was a great man. He was a service officer, a Quileute warrior, and a damn fine human being, a very good friend. And we wanted to honor him for his work out here and his dedication to the community. But that will be a 7-bedroom house located across the street. And the intention on that is to try to help serve people who need more care, from mental health issues to mainly medical. We've got a lot of aging Vietnam vets that we've been serving. And over the last 3 years, we have lost 3 of our vets in our program here, just due to COPD and cancer. So we're wanting to be able to try to serve the needs of the vets in our community more holistically. There isn't enough housing in Clallam County. There's not enough housing in all of the country for any bracket at all. And so we have found through our nonprofit that we just have to simply keep creating it. Our goal is to take this footprint of Hobucket, the 7-bedroom house, where there's support, there's a house manager that lives inside, there's kind of a communal sense of living, it's a sense of family. We want to recreate that. The next one we'd like to build in Sequim, and then we'd like to have one in Hadlock. Our ultimate goal would be that people could help keep replicating what we're doing in other areas. And as I said, we have a large social media presence, about 10,000 followers with Facebook and Instagram, and I'm hopeful that we can only expand our reach and let people know what we're doing so that they can recreate what we're doing in their communities. If I have just a moment, I would love to be able to tell you a little bit about Ken Thela. I actually have a cool picture that a selfie back in the day with a real camera that Ken had taken of himself. So when I was first working at the mental health agency here in Forks, I got a phone call from a man who lived in Joyce, and he said, hey, there's this Vietnam era vet, and he lives up at the Hoco. He actually lived at Duck Point, which is just south of Shai Shai. And he said he's really having some issues. And I said, well, what's going on? And this was part of my day-to-day vernacular, where I would just get a call about someone who is in crisis. And he said, well, you know, I only see him every so often. He said he lives 5 miles off the main road behind 2 locked gates. He's really difficult to get to. And he said, but his eyesight is failing, and his chainsaw has broken, and he's gonna kill himself. And I said, that seems a little dramatic. I said, are you sure is it that kind of a crisis? Should we try and, get to him today? And the guy said, no, it's practical. Now, I've worked with vets a long time, and I knew Ken a lot of years, and it, not to make light at all of suicide, but for him, it was a practical issue. This man was a voracious reader. He couldn't read anymore. His chainsaw wasn't working properly. In fact, by the time I had actually got to him, it wasn't working at all. And it was how he had heat for his building and for his small little structure, and how he also would cut wood for other people, and he was able to be able to make ends meet, by doing some projects for people. So by the time I finally met with Ken, it was about 2 weeks later. It meant the man from Joyce going up there, telling him that I could meet with him, bringing Ken down, arranging a time, bringing Ken down to Forks, and then I met with him. He was this little tiny wisp of a man. He really looked like an elf. He was this tiny little man. He had this long, scraggly beard, You could just tell it was a little bit like he used to be red. And he wouldn't look you in the eye. And I asked him, what he needed. And he just said, well, I can't see, and I want to be able to read, and I don't have any income. So immediately I took him down to DSHS. He agreed to do that, and we got him on food stamps. And we went over to the store. I'll never forget it. And he bought himself a whole quart of milk, and he just glug, 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 glug the quart of milk. And he said, man, I haven't had any milk for a long time. This is awesome. So we got to talking, and I said, if you got in with VA healthcare, you qualify. I said, if you got in with VA healthcare, we could probably get your eyes fixed. And he goes, well, I don't know about that. So it took months of working with him. Oh, wait, I digress. So the first thing I did is that he said, I don't think so. I'll get my eyes fixed. I don't think so. So I was hopeful that I could find him a used chainsaw. So I made some calls that night, and I found a gentleman who said, I know some older guys, and they might have a chainsaw. Let me get back to you tomorrow. So the next day I get a call from this gentleman, and he said, we've all decided we're going to buy a brand new chainsaw for this guy. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I called the buddy in Joyce, and I said, hey, we got a chainsaw for Ken. And he's like, what? You gotta be kidding me. So a couple weeks later, Ken came back into Forks, and we gave him the brand new chainsaw, a brand new pair of boots, a whole bunch of different things, you know, that could be useful for him, some leather gloves, what have you, because the guys went in on it and spent quite a bit of money on him down at Jerry's down there, Small Engines, and they got him a whole new setup. And he was really pleased. And I knew that this got him trusting me. It helped to build the rapport. So I then talked to him that day about whether or not, once again, whether or not we might be able to get his eyes done. And he said, well, I don't know, maybe. But he did agree to sign up for VA healthcare. So once again, got him in the door. A few months later is a stand down, where we have the events where we have all these different folks there, these vendors and people that can be there, social service agencies to help veterans that are in crisis. And Ken showed up with his buddy from Joyce. And I said, hey, what do you think about your eyes? And he goes, you know what? I think maybe it would be good. So made an appointment right on the spot because the VA was there and said, can we make a call? And they said, yep. So we made a call. We got an appointment for him to get his eyes looked at. Had to drive him all the way to American Lake. It was almost a 6-month process to get one eye done and get the other eye done, but he got his eyes fixed. So he had his chainsaw, he got his eyes fixed, he was doing all right. He was living out in the woods for years, probably 7, 8 years, I guess. And I'd hear from him occasionally if he needed something, or I'd see him at a stand down. I get a call from his buddy in Joyce. He says, hey, I've got a problem with Ken. I said, what's going on? He goes, I was just out there. I was visiting him. He can't breathe. I said, like bad? He goes, yeah. He said, he's like, he has pneumonia. And I called the VA. I got clearance. I said, you bring him to the ER immediately. So he had to drive back up. He got Ken. 5-6 hours every time I had to do anything like this with him at a minimum. So we get him down here, and the ER doctor said, if you go back up there to your property, now he didn't own anything. He was a squatter on someone's land. He said he was living in a little tiny travel trailer that was a little 10-footer. And he had heat just from his little tiny wood stove that he had, but he had no power. He had no running water. And he said, if you go back up there, the ER doc did, he said, you're going to die from this. He goes, I really recommend you go to Sarges Place for a little while and try to get better. So finally, Ken agreed. I told him we had a 2-bedroom apartment upstairs that was vacant at the time. And I said, you could just stay here. So Ken trusted me enough from being with us over, off and on over the years of connecting with us. So we got him moved in, and he stayed with us for a week. And then he said, I really would love to have my bicycle. So you got to, we go get your bike. So we went up and we drove up there and got his bike. And then about a month later, he says, my cat's up there. So what do you mean you have a cat? I had no idea he had a cat. He never talked about Susie. He goes, yeah, my cat. He had a buddy that had been driving up there every day and feeding the cat. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, well, we'll go get her. So we drive up there, we get the cat. And he was way up there in the middle of nowhere, I swear. And, it was the weirdest thing, because once he had the cat, he had his bicycle, it was like he was okay being here. He still talked about going back up to the remote area, but he seemed to be comfortable. So we just treated him as one of our vets here. But a couple months after he'd been living here, he was talking about having this pain, kind of this gut pain. So we took him to the doctor. We were getting these tests, and they were looking at him. Pretty soon they realized he's sick. He has a tumor that is literally attached to his aorta. And the doctor said it's going to choke out his aorta and he's going to have a heart attack. Well, a little bit longer, another month, they have another test and they realize he has it is metastasizing, he has pancreatic cancer. So within this 28 days after that diagnosis, he died. But during that time, it always gets me emotional because Ken was my first vet. He was a good man. I really liked him, but he was a character. But I found out during that time that Ken had a lover in New York. He had a child in New York. I had no idea he had a child. This child had some severe mental health issues and had actually been institutionalized. But during this 28 days, he reconnected with his ex-lover. He reconnected with his sister who lived in Virginia Beach and said his goodbyes to her. He reconnected with everyone that lived and had summer cabins in the Hoko area, the park rangers he knew over the years. He'd been there for 30, 40 years. He reconnected with all of this humanity and had beautiful goodbyes with people. And he was a beautiful artist. And he gave away things and gave mementos and drew pictures for people. He created the logo that we use for our farm stand. He just reconnected with life. And after he died, I was talking to his friend in Joyce, and his friend said to me, you know, Ken was a chronic alcoholic. He smoked pot chronically. He was really checked out guy. And I looked at him and I said, he didn't do any of that here. He lived here for a year. And he said, no, he wanted to honor you in your program. It's like, so we had this beautiful moment with this man in the last year of his life where he had rich and engaging conversations. He was a deeply spiritual man. He had a beautiful sense of humor, a wry sense of humor. And we had this wonderful, poignant experience with him. In fact, our house manager, David Durnford, had only moved in a month before Ken had passed away. And he was new in his sobriety himself. David was. He'd only been sober for about a year. And he had these deep connections with Ken. And it was life-changing for him. And it was fascinating because they talked about sobriety and they talked about spiritualism and they talked about their past. And it was an enlightening experience. Dave and I were just talking about it yesterday. He asked me, he goes, you're talking with Rotary, you're going to talk about Ken? And I said, I can't not talk about Ken. He's just such a poignant part of my mind. He was part of the reason that Sarges Place was built, and yet I never thought he would actually live here. And so the fact that we had him here was a full circle moment for me, and was a beautiful point for our program. And he's a marker for me as to how people can change with awareness, and sometimes traumatic events can bring folks closer to themselves. I don't know how else to say it. I do have I was supposed to talk a little more about Hobucket House. I got excited and wanted to talk about Ken. I do have a little tiny PowerPoint. It's just some pictures, and I've never shared a screen before. I have no idea how to do that. Am I able to do that?
I believe you should be able to do that. If you just go down to the bottom of your screen, it should say share screen.
Yeah, and it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, Brian's gonna have to bring you up then, so just take a
If
second.
you have the time, it'd just be kind of fun to.
You should be able to do it now.
Magical. Okay. In fact, I don't know, can you see my background right now? Can you see what I'm looking at on my screen?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah, can you?
It is a house, yeah.
That's an aerial shot. That's a little old. Just so you know, this is the house across the street.
Yes.
This is called Camp Solduck. The small building on the far right near the red pickup there's actually been a larger building built onto the front of that, which is our farm stand. The double car garage is actually our secondhand store. And this is when we first bought it. A friend of ours has a drone. And then the two-story building back in the rear of the picture is Sarges Place, the shelter where I'm sitting now. But here we go. Wow, this is like magical to me. I've never done this. Dun, dun, dun.
You're doing awesome.
I'm so thrilled. This is cool. All right, so I'm very intimidated by stuff like this. All right, so Hobucket House is going to be right across the street from us. And this is just kind of the empty lot. So the little red pickup on the in that photo is actually our renter. We have an apartment behind the double car garage, and then we have one single apartment inside the triple the 3-bedroom house that we have there. You can see there's a large fence, and that's where our hens and our garden is at. But in May, we're going to have a concrete foundation poured, water, sewer, and power hookups, and our parking will be put in. That's a $40,000 project. God, stuff is so expensive. So the interior will look somewhat like this. It'll be 7 bedrooms, 6 bath, communal kitchen, pantry, and laundry, almost 4,000 square foot house with a big wraparound deck. Rent will be about 30% of the income of the folks moving in. All utilities will be included, and it comes with case management and then my therapeutic care as well. And this is the basic layout. So it will be a house manager who has a slightly larger bedroom and 6 other bedrooms, communal living. So it's a sense of family. This is how Sarges Place is laid out, so that they have, it's not this exact layout, but the structure is so that folks can have a sense of community and support of one another. It's kind of interesting because I found that I like small homes and apartments for people, but there are some people that thrive in having a sense of support right around them. And I think most people do. Friendship is critical. And I think that support and just having eyes on with other people is a really critical piece for humanity. The long-term goals for the remainder of this site over there will be actually removing the house, building a 10,000 square foot new secondhand store, which will have a coffee bar and roastery, World War II theme, which would be kind of fun. Proper storage for our nonprofit, sorting space for our staff, and Etsy sale accommodation. We've got thousands of dollars every month in Etsy sales. My daughter is working for us now. She's 20 and she's spectacular and has been selling all antiques and collectibles online with Etsy, including ornaments. We sell new ornaments that are old world Christmas ornaments at the holidays. And it's been really a lovely thing for us. So I've been really pleased with how that's all worked out for all of us. All right, so I have absolutely no idea on how to make the screen sharing stop. So there you go.
Go up to the top and it should say stop.
Oh, stop share.
There
Technical. There we go. Yay. All right. So does anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, you're an expert now on Zoom.
Great job, Sheri.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Sheri, you could talk for another 8 hours and you would absolutely captivate me with your stories. Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I think that I have to share stories of our people. We've had some really challenging times, and we've had some really beautiful moments with our clients. Oh, let me say though, I do always have to share this. One of our vets that passed away this year his name was Grayson Malloy. And just to kind of give a synopsis of the humanity of who we're serving here. I was working with Gray. He'd been in our shelter for about a year. And I was on the phone with a nurse from the VA in Port Angeles. And she looks at me and she goes, Grayson Malloy. She goes, didn't you used to live in Juneau? And Gray goes, yeah. And she said, weren't you living underneath a bridge? And I'm looking at him and I go, you lived under a bridge in Juneau? He goes, yeah. Why? And she said, because I helped to get you into housing when I lived up in Juneau and I worked at the clinic up there. And he's like, well, oh yeah. And she said, why did you move out? And she apparently did some outreach work as a nurse in Juneau, had helped to get him into housing, but his buddies moved into the housing with him. And he was like so upset that he moved out. So it was like, I had no idea that people would be living underneath bridges, even in Juneau, and how horrific. And, but Gray lived with us here. We moved him into the house across the street and he had severe COPD. He had oxygen tanks everywhere. And he passed away probably of a heart attack within his apartment this year. But he was a delightful man. He was a curmudgeon and rather challenging, but we really, really loved him. He was great. And we were so grateful that we could help him in his latter stages of his life. And he left a note for us that he actually had a little policy for an insurance policy, and it was for a couple that had been kind to him in Montana. He accidentally got on a train one time that ended up in Montana, and this family took him in. And so I'm sure he was drunk at the time, and this family took him in, and they were kind to him and let him stay in one of their little a camper trailer they had for about a year. And so he paid them back with this little life insurance policy. And that was the only family that we knew that he had. So anyway, I'm sorry, I will digress because I'm passionately about these guys and gals, but we've had a lot of interesting people that have lived here.
Sure, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you know, I'm a vet. My wife's a vet, and my son's just returned from Afghanistan.
Oh,
Just everything you're doing for our vets, it's very much appreciated. You know, you've got a heart of gold, and you're dynamite, huh? And everything you're doing is very much appreciated.
oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for your service. I mean, the vets are all around us, and so many people have served, and it takes every person to be an active part of the military. And as I want to always say to everybody, folks will say, oh, I wasn't a combat vet. You got to have peacetime vets to make the machine work and to make it run throughout the I was going to say decades, but the centuries that it's been in existence. I'm also a DAR member and Daughters of the American Revolution, and my family has served way back, and I deeply appreciate that. I did not serve, but I feel that we all need to support those who have. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sheri. Is there any other questions for Sheri?
I just wanted to add, Sheri, you said you didn't serve, but by God, you're serving now, and we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
That is true.
Thank you.
You're amazing, Sheri.
Thank you so much.
I could listen to you for another 2 hours if you are able to. But,
Bless your heart.
Well, we'd love to have you come
We'd love to
back
have
in
you come
a
back.
year.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if I may, I want to give a shout out to John Brewer, because John, you are an amazing guy, and I deeply appreciate you, and you are always aware of forks, and that is huge for us out here. So thank you for always being aware of us.
He's our diamond in the rough here.
Thanks you guys so much. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Thank you so much, Sheri.
Appreciate it. So at this point, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to adjourn, and